If you think Animal House was just a wild college comedy about the Delta Boys, the truth 47 years later will shock you. Behind all the laughs were broken marriages, sudden and heartbreaking deaths, and even cast members who unexpectedly became millionaires, some nearly billionaires. Let's revisit their real lives, and you won't believe how dramatically they've changed. Donald Sutherland as Professor Dave Jennings. Donald Sutherland was born on July 17, 1935, in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. At 43 years old, Sutherland played Professor Dave Jennings, the lazy, dry-witted, and strangely philosophical academic, in Animal House, 1978. His calm, sardonic presence became both the comic relief and the quiet anchor of the story. But behind the humor, Sutherland's personal life was marked by difficulty. His first marriage to Lois Hardwick gradually fell apart as constant travel and unstable work kept them on opposite sides of life. That breakup set the tone for the second one, his marriage to Shirley Douglas, which began with passion but soon buckled under activism, long separations, and his affair with Jane Fonda. The collapse of that marriage left him carrying the weight of responsibility for twins Kiefer and Rachel, creating a private turmoil that quietly seeped into his work during films such as MASH and Clute. With Francine Racette, Sutherland finally found long-term stability, yet even that peace came with shadows of its own. His chronic health problems, echoes of childhood battles with polio, meningitis, and rheumatic fever, gradually grew more severe. Breathlessness, recurring infections, and fatigue forced him to slow down, even as he tried to maintain the sense of purpose that acting gave him. Over time, the contrast between career triumph and physical decline created an emotional tension he often described as feeling isolated inside my own body. Sadly, Donald Sutherland died on June 20, 2024, at the age of 88 from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease while under hospice care in Miami. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $60 million, a lifetime accumulation of film work, television roles, and carefully managed property investments. John Vernon as Dean Vernon Wormer. John Vernon was born on February 24, 1932, in Zaner, Saskatchewan, Canada. At 46 years old, Vernon played Dean Vernon Wormer, the cold, vengeful, sharp-tongued authoritarian obsessed with punishing Delta House, in Animal House, 1978. His performance became one of the film's defining comedic contrasts, giving the story its most unforgettable antagonist. Yet his on-screen ferocity stood in stark contrast to the emotional fragility shaping his personal life. His marriage to Nancy West began with genuine hope, but quickly deteriorated under Hollywood's relentless demands. Struggling with typecasting, irregular income, and mounting pressure to provide for a growing family, Vernon drifted further from the stability he once had. The marriage unraveled in 1970, leaving him alone and carrying the emotional consequences of a home that had quietly fallen apart. The aftermath seeped into his work, giving roles in films like Dirty Harry and The Outlaw Josie Wales an unmistakable undercurrent of bitterness and exhaustion. As the years progressed, Vernon's challenges deepened. 2 failed real estate investments drove him into bankruptcy, amplifying the stress that had already pushed him to lean on alcohol more than he ever admitted publicly. Although he continued acting, including voice roles that showcased his unmistakable authority, the personal cost of his career became harder to hide. Without remarrying, he lived much of his later life in solitude, focusing solely on work. Tragically, John Vernon died on February 1, 2005, at the age of 72 from complications following heart surgery in Los Angeles. At the time of his passing, his net worth was estimated at $5 million, earned through decades of relentless dedication despite the emotional and financial burdens he carried to the end. Cesare Danova as Mayor Carmine DePasto. Cesare Danova was born on March 1, 1926, in Bergamo, Lombardy, Italy. At 52 years old, Danova played Mayor Carmine DePasto, the corrupt, politically hostile, humorously manipulative mayor of Faber, in Animal House, 1978, delivering a performance that blended menace with sly comedic charm. His aristocratic posture and controlled intensity made the character unforgettable. Danova's personal life, however, was far more fragile than the powerful figures he portrayed. His first marriage to Pamela Matthews began during his early Hollywood years, but the transition from Rome to the American studio system placed enormous strain on their relationship. As he struggled with language barriers, cultural pressure, and typecasting, their marriage gradually fractured. They divorced in 1963, even as they attempted to co-parent their two sons, Marco and Fabrizio. His second marriage to Patricia Ann Geddes offered companionship, yet the emotional residue of past failures lingered, creating a quiet sadness beneath his polished exterior. Career frustrations compounded his private battles. After a promising start in Europe, Danova faced continual disappointments in Hollywood, from losing the lead in Ben-Hur to having his major role in Cleopatra cut because of the Burton-Taylor scandal. The repeated setbacks wore down his confidence and fed a cycle of anxiety and overwork. By the 1970s, financial missteps, including failed film investments, pushed him into bankruptcy, while the mounting stress led to chronic caffeine dependence that worsened his overall health. Finally, Cesare Danova died suddenly of a heart attack on March 19, 1992, at age 66, collapsing during an Academy Committee meeting in Los Angeles. At the time of his passing, his net worth was estimated at $2 million, a modest sum considering a career spanning more than 300 screen appearances. Vera Bloom as Marion Wormer. Vera Bloom was born on August 7, 1938, in Lynn, Massachusetts, USA. At 40 years old, Bloom played Marion Wormer, the witty, drunken, sharply comedic wife of the dean, in Animal House, 1978, transforming a small role into a scene-stealing performance filled with vulnerability and mischievous charm. Unlike the character's life she played, her personal life was marked by tension from the beginning. Her first marriage to Richard Collier emerged during her early stage years, but financial pressure and artistic uncertainty eroded their partnership. They separated by 1969, leaving Bloom emotionally shaken as she juggled survival jobs, acting classes, and unstable career prospects. When she married film critic Jay Cox in 1972, she found a more enduring bond, yet even that relationship carried its own friction. Their arguments frequently centered on her career. He analyzed films for a living, while she struggled to secure roles that would let her escape typecasting. Her career itself was shaped by emotional strain. Bloom's film debut in Medium Cool exposed her to the real violence of the 1968 Chicago riots, a traumatic experience that left lingering anxiety. In the years that followed, she devoted herself to family life, especially after the birth of her son Sam in 1981, limiting her opportunities and triggered periods of mild depression. Although she earned critical praise for performances in High Plains Drifter and The Last Temptation of Christ, the internal conflict between artistic ambition and personal responsibility never truly eased. Sadly, Vera Bloom died on January 9, 2019, in Bar Harbor, Maine, at the age of 80 from complications of dementia. Her final years were marked by rapid cognitive decline. She left a net worth estimated at $3 million, the result of decades of dedicated, quietly influential work on stage and screen. Stephen Furst as Kent Flounder Dorfman. Stephen Furst was born on May 8, 1954, in Norfolk, Virginia. At 24 years old, Furst played Kent Flounder Dorfman, the clumsy, gentle-hearted pledge who became the emotional glue of Delta House, in Animal House, 1978. His innocent energy and warmth made Flounder one of the most beloved characters in the entire film. The real story of his life, however, carried far more pain than the cheerful persona he projected. Furst's marriage to Lorraine Wright, which began in 1976, was built on deep affection, but quickly became strained as his health deteriorated. He had already lost both parents to diabetes by age 16, and the same diagnosis followed him, creating a shadow over their early marriage. As his weight climbed past 300 pounds and complications worsened, Lorraine found herself caring for both a husband and 2 young sons while managing the fear of losing him early. The emotional pressure tightened around the family through the 1980s, just as Furst struggled to hold on to steady work. Professional frustrations only added to the stress at home. After Animal House, he was typecast into the lovable overweight guy, a label that both limited his career and deepened his insecurity. When Delta House failed and his directing projects collapsed financially, Furst faced bankruptcy twice, painful setbacks that brought tension into his marriage and shook his confidence. Although he experienced a major health turnaround in the 1990s, losing 85 pounds, diabetes continued to erode his kidneys, his nerves, and eventually his ability to work consistently. Through it all, Lorraine remained by his side, even as the disease slowly reshaped every corner of their family life. Sadly, Stephen Furst died on June 16, 2017, at age 63 from complications of diabetes, passing away at his home in Moore Park, California. His legacy lived on through his sons, Nathan and Griff, both of whom followed him into the entertainment world. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $1 million, a modest reflection of a career defined not by fame but by resilience and a heartfelt desire to keep entertaining even as his health failed him. John Belushi as John Bluto Blutarski. John Belushi was born on January 24, 1949, in Chicago, Illinois. At 29 years old, Belushi played John Bluto Blutarski, the chaotic, unstoppable force at the heart of Delta House, in Animal House, 1978, delivering a performance so explosive and wild that it redefined American comedy. His physical brilliance turned every scene into legend. But his marriage to Judith Jacqueline carried the weight of both devotion and devastation. They had been together since high school and married in 1976, entering adulthood side by side, yet almost immediately, fame began pulling Belushi away from the life they had built. As Saturday Night Live skyrocketed him into national stardom, cocaine and heroin followed him everywhere. Judith watched the man she loved lose himself to addiction, torn between protecting him and trying to save herself from the chaos that followed every relapse. Their bond endured, but the fractures grew deeper with each night. Belushi vanished into Los Angeles clubs or New York hotel rooms. The pressure of fame only worsened his downward spiral. After the explosive success of SNL, Belushi's energy began to burn out under impossible expectations. The failure of 1941 broke his confidence, and studios grew wary of his unpredictability. Even his triumph with the Blues Brothers could not rescue him from the exhaustion, self-doubt, and drug dependency that followed him from set to set. His marriage strained under the burden. Judith loved him fiercely, but no amount of pleading could compete with the addiction that consumed him. In later interviews, she admitted feeling guilt for letting him fly to Los Angeles that final week, unaware it would be the last time she saw him alive. Sadly, John Belushi died on March 5, 1982, at the age of 33, after a fatal injection of heroin and cocaine at the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles. He was buried at Abel's Hill Cemetery on Martha's Vineyard, and later moved to an unmarked grave nearby, due to overwhelming crowds at his tombstone. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $2 million, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance, chaos, and a talent that burned brighter than it could survive Douglas Kenney as Daniel Stork Simpson. Douglas Kenney was born on December 10, 1946, in West Palm Beach, Florida. At 32 years old, Kenney played Daniel Stork Simpson, the oddball Delta brother known for his bizarre, deadpan unpredictability, in Animal House, 1978, a role he chose for himself because it matched his own eccentric nature more closely than any other character. Yet behind the comedic genius was a man in constant battle with his own mind. His marriage to Alexandra Appleton, which lasted from 1970 to 1973, deteriorated as his work on National Lampoon consumed him. Endless deadlines, perfectionism, and the pressure of being the magazine's driving creative force created an emotional distance neither of them could bridge. After the divorce, Kenney buried himself deeper in writing, using humor as a shield while privately sinking into waves of depression. As his career soared, his personal connections weakened. Although hailed as a pioneer of modern American comedy, Kenney increasingly withdrew from friends and colleagues. His creative brilliance came with bouts of despair, and the weight of expectation became overwhelming. Even the massive success of Animal House brought him little comfort. Sadly, Douglas Kenney died on August 27, 1980, at the age of 33 after falling from a cliff in Kauai, Hawaii, a death officially ruled accidental, though long shadowed by speculation about suicide. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $4 million, the result of National Lampoon, Animal House, and Caddyshack Tim Matheson as Eric Otter Stratton. Tim Matheson was born on December 31, 1947 in Glendale, California. At 30 years old, Matheson played Eric Otter Stratton, the smooth-talking, effortlessly charming leader of the Delta House, in Animal House, 1978, a performance that cemented him as the film's charismatic heartthrob. His personal life, however, unfolded with far more turbulence than the confidence he projected on screen. His first marriage to Jennifer Leake lasted from 1968 to 1971, ending under the strain of youth, instability, and clashing career ambitions. Years later, his second marriage to Megan Murphy began with optimism, but slowly eroded as work demands intensified. Acting, directing, and constant travel created emotional distance, and the couple struggled to balance family commitments with careers, pulling them in opposite directions. The tension of raising 3 children while navigating a competitive industry eventually fractured the marriage, leaving Matheson with the weight of 2 failed unions before he found steadier ground again. Despite his early start in Hollywood, Matheson's career faced its own set of challenges. Typecasting in comedic or youthful roles made it difficult for him to transition into more complex characters, causing professional frustration throughout the 1970s and early 1980s. Gradually, he shifted into directing as a way to regain control over his artistic path. This reinvention later paid off, especially with the acclaim he received for The West Wing. Now, Tim Matheson is 77 years old and still active in Hollywood, continuing his work both in front of and behind the camera. His later success, including his long-running role in Virgin River, helped restore the confidence that earlier years had worn down. With an estimated net worth of $7 million, he now enjoys a steadier chapter of life, sustained by his marriage to Elizabeth Marighetto, and a renewed sense of creative purpose, Peter Riegert as Donald Boone Schoenstein. Peter Riegert was born on April 11, 1947, in New York City, New York. At 31 years old, Riegert played Donald Boone Schoenstein, the dry-witted, quietly loyal best friend of Pinto, in Animal House, 1978, the role that captured his understated charm and natural comedic control. His path, however, had none of the confidence his character exuded. Before entering film, Riegert spent years wrestling with rejection on the New York stage, moving between tiny off-Broadway productions, understudy positions, and part-time jobs simply to manage rent. The grind of Broadway left him emotionally stretched, and the constant cycle of auditions without reward created a loneliness he rarely spoke about. As his film and television career slowly gained traction, Riegert built a life defined by independence rather than partnership. He never married, choosing instead an inward-facing lifestyle that kept his emotional world tightly guarded. He spent years of focusing entirely on work, teaching, and occasional directing, while avoiding the commitments that had once overwhelmed him during his most unstable artistic years. Now, Peter Riegert is 78 years old and continues to work selectively in film and television, appearing in prestige series and character roles that value his seasoned presence. With a career spanning 5 decades and an estimated net worth of $4 million, he remains one of the most quietly enduring actors to emerge from Animal House Bruce McGill as Daniel Simpson, D-Day Day. Bruce McGill was born on July 11, 1950, in San Antonio, Texas. At 28 years old, McGill played Daniel Simpson, D-Day Day, the eccentric, motorcycle-roaring Delta wildcard in Animal House, 1978. It delivered one of the film's most unpredictable and beloved performances. His rise, however, came with physical and emotional costs. During filming, McGill threw himself into the chaos of stunt-heavy scenes, resulting in real injuries, including cracked teeth from an improvised fight sequence. In this time, he moved between regional theaters, unpaid workshops, and long periods of unemployment that left him questioning whether acting would ever sustain him. This period of instability shaped his relentless work ethic and the guarded seriousness behind his comedic parts. Away from the screen, McGill's personal life offered more stability. He married Laura Mackenzie in 1994, and the relationship became an anchor through decades of demanding film and television schedules. The marriage endured for years, although his career involved constant travel and long production days. His work on Rizzoli and Isles, spanning over 100 episodes, finally gave him the routine and security that had eluded him for so many years. Now, Bruce McGill is 75 years old and continues to act steadily in both television and film, often portraying seasoned authority figures shaped by the same grit that defined his early life. With an estimated net worth of $4 million, he remains one of Hollywood's most dependable character actors. Mark Metcalf as Doug Niedermeyer. Mark Metcalf was born on March 11, 1946 in Findlay, Ohio. At 32 years old, Metcalf played the vicious, authoritarian ROTC officer Doug Niedermeyer in Animal House, 1978. This role was so convincing that it shaped the rest of his career in ways he never fully escaped. Being typecast as a villain took him a psychological toll. He often said that playing men fueled by anger made him confront emotions he wished he didn't recognize in himself. His marriage to Elizabeth "Libby" Wick eventually fractured under the pressure of raising a son with special needs while he struggled to maintain steady work, leading to a painful divorce that left both emotional and financial scars. Yet even while dealing with personal turmoil, Metcalf kept building a career defined by iconic antagonists, from the demonic master in Buffy the Vampire Slayer to the arrogant maestro on Seinfeld. Between roles, he stepped away from Hollywood, running a family restaurant in Wisconsin and producing small films with local young writers. By the 2000s, he had rebuilt himself again, this time in Montana and later Columbus, dedicating much of his time to theater, advocacy work, and Alzheimer's awareness. Today, Mark Metcalf is 79 years old and continues to act selectively while living a quieter life shaped by family, resilience, and the unpredictable legacy of a role that made him unforgettable. With an estimated net worth of $2 million, he remains one of Animal House's most recognizable faces, and one whose journey behind the camera was far more complicated than Niedermeyer's rigid bark ever revealed Mary Louise Weller as Mandy Pepperidge. Mary Louise Weller was born on September 1, 1946, in New York City. At 31 years old, Weller played Mandy Pepperidge, the polished, sharp-tongued sorority girl, in Animal House, 1978. This role that briefly turned her into a late 1970s pop culture icon. But her rise carried its own hidden fractures. Before Hollywood, Weller had already endured the pressures of the modeling world, leaving her with deep anxieties about appearance and self-worth. Acting offered freedom at first, but the grind of typecasting soon followed. Beautiful, brittle characters in thriller scripts, TV guest spots, and supporting roles that never allowed her true talent to surface. Her brief marriage to Edward Merritt. Blake ended quietly after 2 years, leaving her to rebuild a life that didn't revolve around the unstable rhythms of film sets. By the early 1990s, exhausted by inconsistency and disillusioned with the roles she was offered, Weller pivoted away from Hollywood almost entirely. She reinvented herself in real estate and local theater, carving out a more private existence, writing plays, caring for horses, and performing only when a project genuinely moved her. The shift freed her from the expectations that had once defined her success. Now, Mary Louise Weller is 79 years old and living a largely private life far from the spotlight that once crowned her a rising star. With an estimated net worth of $1.5 million, she remains a quiet but memorable part of Animal House history. Kevin Bacon as Chip Diller. Kevin Bacon was born on July 8, 1958, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At 20 years old, Bacon played Chip Diller, the awkward, overeager Omega cheerleader, in Animal House, 1978. Diller marked his official film debut and the first tiny stepping stone toward an astonishing career. But the years that followed were far from smooth. Bacon spent the early 1980s trapped between obscurity and expectation, taking small roles while watching peers rise faster. It weighed heavily on him, the pressure to escape the lightweight debut and prove he wasn't destined to fade after a single comedic part. Through that emotional strain, his most stabilizing force became his marriage to actress Kyra Sedgwick. Their relationship, beginning in 1988, survived the same turbulence that crushed many Hollywood couples. That resilience bled into Bacon's work. He kept pushing forward, reshaping himself role by role, from Footloose, 1984, to darker, wounded characters that mirrored periods of personal frustration. The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon phenomenon made him a cultural icon, but also a reluctant symbol of Hollywood overexposure, forcing him to confront insecurities about being taken seriously. Still, he rebuilt again in the 2000s, grounding his life in craft, family, and a second career of steady, character-driven performances that restored both stability and pride. By the time he appeared in Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. 2024, he had become one of the rare actors who survived reinvention after reinvention without losing himself. As of 2025, Kevin Bacon is 67 years old and remains active in film, television, and music, performing with his brother in the Bacon Brothers while continuing to act in high-profile projects. With an estimated net worth of $70 million, he stands as a man who endured financial loss, career uncertainty, and public scrutiny, and still managed to transform all of it into a lifetime of longevity and influence. That's the story of the Animal House cast, 47 years later. Which transformation surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more shocking Hollywood updates.